Hello and welcome everyone, my name is Captain Frost and today is a continuation of our Build Watch series where we're looking at different types of builds on different skills, and we're trying to decompose them, trying to understand what's the bad and what's the good parts of the builds, how it's going to be easier for you to understand how the build works, all the mechanics, different mechanics that are going on in there. Today's skill is an arc, and today is going to be a Hierophant version of the arc. It's going to be our mana version of character. So as you can see here, we have 7,000 mana and 2,500, like almost 3,000 life, and we're gonna be having quite okay effective hit pool with this build. We're gonna have just a bunch of damage. Even though the build itself is not cheap, it relies on your void batteries, which are, to be honest, the later the league goes, they are almost always become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, so you can afford it pretty well just on pair with any other rare good weapons. So yeah, today's character is taken from the top 100 levels from the Poeninja. As you can see here, the character's name is Scott Evil, and we can see here Scott Evil. Yeah, there it is. So it's in top 10 first level 100s on the arc, and to be honest, most of the arcs in here, they are not self-cast. It's Cyclone with arc, maybe not the most, but not most of them, but like at least half. And this is a good example of self-caster arc, and to be honest, as you can see as well, Hierophants are quite popular. Witch Elementalist is definitely not on the list as much. So yeah, and most of them are building in mana. They're using Cloak of Defiance, they're using Void Batteries, they're going quite hard on power charges, and we're gonna try to describe how all the intricacies of the build work in PoB, looking at it and stuff. And yes, what do I really want to emphasize here is that if you want more content like this, definitely subscribe to the channel, because I'm gonna produce all this content just I will try to do it as fast and as much as I possibly can. So yeah, let's start from our just basic offensive and defensive stats, then go for our talent tree, our jewels, skills, items, and how maybe you can make some cheap versions of different items in order for this build to work. But to be honest, there's nothing too crazy going on with this build, so it shouldn't be problematic to league start it, especially in trade league. Yeah, so let's go. As we can see, we're taking here some regeneration, which we will tinker on a bit later. So yeah, we're taking here some life regeneration, some mana regeneration. We have some armor and energy shield parts, but that's not as essential. So one of our main points is definitely gonna be mana nodes. As you can see here, we have 328% increased mana, which is just massive, and you do want that because your mana is effectively your additional health pool. Yeah, then we're all obviously taking some life nodes, even though it's not too much. It's only 33% of life. So we see here these parts that give us maximum life, and these talents as well. Then we're taking all the spell damage, all the crit strike, all the elemental damage, all the LA resistances that are coming with elemental damage as well. So increasing maximum power charges, increasing maximum endurance charges. Here we do have our healthy mind. Increases and reductions to life in radius are transformed to apply to mana at 200% of their value, which means that these three talents are gonna be instead your mana talents. And here we're taking agnostic. Maximum energy shield is 0 while not on full life. Sacrifice 20% of mana per second to recover that much life, which will help us with our sustain, and it probably will be our like main sustain way, yeah, just to replenish our health. Then we're taking more mana and some arcane surge nodes in here. That part of the damage taken recouped as mana as well, for like more regeneration and just just replenishments of mana as well. Some spell crit chance and crit multi, which is quite obvious that we truly need that, especially when we're using a bunch of power charges. For the cluster jewels, I'm gonna come back a bit later. Then we're taking our power charge generation. Our power charge increases +1 to minimum power charges. We're taking all these power charge nodes, and we're taking the charge mastery for additional damage increases per power charge, endurance charge as well, but main point here is power charges. So some lightning damage, increases and reductions to maximum mana also apply to shock, which will be definitely quite powerful in here. Then again, more mana, more power charge nodes, more mana again, which is, it's not a surprise. Again, more mana, more crit strike and crit multiplier, some lightning damage paired with a bit of life, but mostly because here we have mana as well. And then with changed by Militant Faith. So Militant Faith is a Legion unique timeless jewel. And as you can see, it's High Templar Dominus. It's Templar jewel. It gives us, maybe I should bring that a bit later, but anyways, we have inner conviction, which is a transfer. It's like transferred big talent point through this timeless jewel, and it gives us 3% more spell damage per power charge, gain power charges instead of frenzy charges. So again, we will have just a bunch. We will have massive amounts of power charges, and we will get more damage if we will have more spell damage from power charges rather than from frenzy charges, even if we was generating frenzy charges instead. Then again, another cluster jewels. So additional crit strike against shocked enemies. We're gonna shock them constantly. Some more crit and crit multi, more mana, and just additional power charge and regular jewel with some crit multi, mana, some resistances, and again crit multi, which, yeah, crit strike chance, as you can see here, we have crit chance 100%, and our crit multiplier is 480%, which means that it's just x5 damage for all our arc weaves, and that's gonna be very powerful. That's why you want as much crit multiplier as possible. Now let's go for our probably first we will go in like Militant Faith. So this is your Legion Jewel, and it gives all your regular nodes additional stuff, additional modifiers, like here +5 devotion, again +5. So yeah, just a bunch of plus devotions. And what are you getting for that devotions? Per 10 devotion, you're getting 4% increased elemental damage and 2% to all elemental resistances, which will have you defensively. It will help you build your items more easily, and it gives us a bunch of damage with just us taking our regular talents, and we were gonna take them anyways. And then it gives us inner conviction in here instead of another talent that wouldn't be good and useful for us. And then with our cluster jewels, if I see, so yes, we saw Healthy Mind in here. There is our Timeless Jewel, and now we're looking at our cluster jewels. So cluster jewels are your spell damage. They, as you can see, small give us a bit of mana regeneration rate, which is not essential, but it's just a nice tidbit. The most important thing that you want to know about cluster jewels is that you don't want many small nodes on them. So if there are less small nodes on your cluster jewels, then it's way better than if you were to go through all the small nodes. They don't really give you that much power. There's a big nodes that we're after for here, and our jewel slots, additional jewel slots as well, of course. So with our big talents, we have some additional elemental damage leached as life, and just elemental damage totally. And we have here increased mana and damage penetration for lightning. For your damage penetrates lightning resistance. and again additional increases to lightning damage. Your critical strikes knock back shocked enemies, which will definitely be like, if you don't really like knockbacks, maybe you can avoid this and just don't take this talent, but it can be very good, it can be very useful for you to kite enemies easier and to not receive that much damage, because we will constantly crit strike and we will constantly shock enemies, which means that we will have knockback almost always on our enemies. And then on second cluster jewel, we have again increased spell damage, mana regeneration node rate, regenerate 1% of energy shield per second if you've cursed an enemy recently. That's as you can see with our ES, it's not important, to be honest. And here we have spell damage, some chance to block spell damage if you've cast, so some additional block chance, which wouldn't really give you too much, but that's a additional good stuff on top. And spell damage and cast speed, just a regular good damage node. Then with our jewels, and with our, we do have some unique jewels. So Sublime Vision, auras from your skills have 39% increased effect on you, always sap while affected by Wrath, and aura skills other than Wrath are disabled. So we wouldn't really use any aura skills that reserve our mana anyways, because we want to use it otherwise. And with our Wrath, as you will see later down, it's not the case. We will use Wrath. So yeah, we will have sap, and that's very good just for our total damage. Yes, and with Watcher's Eye, we see here that damage penetrates lightning resistance while affected by Wrath. Again, there's only Wrath nodes in here, which is quite logical, again, because we're only using this aura, and increased lightning damage while affected by Wrath. So yeah, that's just a bunch of damage from here and there, and with regular nodes, as we saw, it's just more spell damage, in cast speed, some mana regen, and stuff like that. So, and here we have just regular jewels for crit multi, some mana, and crit multi, some mana. That's your things that you want to have. So yeah, I guess that's the thing with our talent tree. Let's go for the skills themselves. And afterwards, we will probably, when we will look at Wrath, we will need to go to the items as well in order to just understand why we do have Wrath here and how are we using it. We have our Val Arc as our main, in our main 6-link. And we do have Awakened Lightning Penetration, so it's 3, yes, so it's our 6-link, enable Val Arc. Yeah, Val Arc is not essential here, but it will definitely help you with your AoE clear. So we have Lightning Penetration for more penetration, and yeah, it's just obvious. Spell Echo for your cast speed, lightning damage, flat lightning damage, then increases the crit strike chance, and power charges on critical strikes. With more damage per power charge, and with the amount of power charge that we have, we will just have insane amount of damage from this support gem as well. Then we have our Arcane Cloak with Arcane Surge and increased duration. So Arcane Cloak is your guard spell, spends a portion of your mana to grant a buff that takes some of the damage from hits for you until depleted. The buff grants added lightning damage based on the amount of mana spent by the skill, shares a cooldown with the other. So yeah, it will spend 64% of your current mana, which your mana will go down quite bit, but it will regen quite fast, and you will have a bunch of additional damage, which is vitally important. We have Arcane Surge and increased duration here, and Enhance in order to increase the effect of our Arcane Cloak. Then we have our curse setup with cast when damage taken, Enfeeble, and Conductivity. Conductivity is your just damage curse, and Enfeeble is your defensive curse. Then we have our Frost Wall with increased duration and cast when damage taken, and Summon Lightning Golem, which is as well is gonna be procced. So your cast when damage taken is level 3, and here we have level 5 Summon Lightning Golem. So your Golem will give you additional cast speed, and it will be automatically resummoned when you're taking some damage, so you don't really need to think about it that much. Then with our Wrath, we're taking Eternal Blessing, Wrath, and Righteous, Divergent Righteous Fire. So with our Eternal Blessing, it's, as you can see here, supports aura skills that reserve life or mana to create auras around you. Supported skills have no reservation and also count as blessing skills. So you can only have one of them, and that's why we're using it with Wrath, because it's this way we're not really reserving our mana. And and we still benefit from the Wrath, and we're benefiting from the from all the Watcher's Eye modes and other stuff that increases our damage through Wrath as well. So with Divergent Righteous Fire, you can see here it engulfs you in fire, so it deals everything that just basic Righteous Fire does. So you will constantly have your Divergent Righteous Fire up, and you will benefit from its more spell damage, and you will benefit from Divergent part, which buff grants increased spell damage, so increased and more, and our regeneration through the Agnostic will just overhead all the damage that we're receiving from the Righteous Fire itself. So as you can see here, total net regen will be plus 1500, so you will be regenerating your life for 1500 life per second, and that's very, very convenient. And now let's check our items. We're gonna start with our weapons. Of course, obviously, it's gonna be 2 Void Batteries, which will provide us with +1 to maximum power charge each, some mana, some crit strike chance, some cast speed, and even if it reduces your spell damage, it increases your spell damage per power charge, and we will have just a complete abundance of power charges, and that will mean that we will have just a very, very big increase of for spell damage from both these weapons. And then as for our helmet, we're taking Crown of the Inward Eye, which gives us Transfiguration Mind of Body and Soul. It gives us a bit of increased maximum life mana as well, which is pretty good, and Arc Chains and additional time is gonna be our enchant. In here with our body armor, it's definitely gonna be Cloak of Defiance. So it's Mind Over Matter, which means that you're taking third of damage received from your mana first, and then from your life. And it will have some mana. It will have some mana regeneration, flat regeneration, which is very good as well. It will have some evasion rating, which will help a little bit. And it has here a corruption for +1 to level of socketed gems, which will be just a very powerful damage boost, but you don't really need that in order for build to work. So with our gloves, we see here that we have to chance to unnerve enemies, and that's just gonna be additional damage. Inflict lightning exposure on hit, which is definitely gonna be just very convenient way for you to inflict a lightning exposure on enemies. You don't need to use any extra skills. It's just automatic. Then we see here some dexterity, probably for our requirements of skill gems and maybe other items, some life, some resistances, and of course mana with a flat life regeneration as well. Then on our boots, we see again flat life regeneration, some mana, some resistances, life, and movement speed. Then with Amulet, we see that we're taking a Aziris foible, which can be quite expensive, at least especially first in the league. Then afterwards, prices can vary. We see here that we allocate Disciple of the Unyielding in as our Anoint. The amulet itself gives you just a bunch of mana. It gives you a bunch of mana regeneration as well, and your items having reduced tribute requirements, but the mana portions of it is what we're after here. Then with our rings, we're taking just regular your life, mana, some crit strike and crit multiplier if it's possible for you to have in there. And just additional resistances and some mana regeneration rate as well, which will work as your life regeneration basically. Then with our belt, We see here Vortex Twine, Stygian Vice, so it gives us just some elemental damage, some resistances, mana recovery rate. That's very good because it's not regeneration, it's a multiplier on your regeneration rate, and some life as well, with our Abyssal Sockets being just global crit strike multiplier, life, mana, and some lightning damage to your skills. So if I was to just comprehends the build, so if I was to say how can you build it way cheaper, of course you can play without void batteries, you can play without your Cloak of Defiance, but you need to take your Mind Over Matter manually then 100%. But it's just gonna be a bit tougher time. You definitely can buy Cloak of Defiance for not as much. Maybe make it just a 5 link, and then it's gonna be okay. Then you don't need to travel for additional talents and to pick Mind Over Matter, which is one of your just build defying mechanics that are in place. Playing without void batteries are not gonna make it it's not gonna be a deal breaker. You will just have less damage. And then when you have enough power charge generation, where you have enough power charge talents applied, then you can swap to void batteries, and when you have enough currency for that as well. Crown of the Inward Eye, it's very good as well, but you still can play without it. Your Aziri's Foible is just a massive mana amulet that you can swap with any other rare items. Yes, you will have way less defensives. Yes, you will have way less regeneration as well, which will make your Righteous Fire being a bit clunkier to use, but it's still possible. Just have here as much flat mana and mana regeneration rate as possible, and then get like life, resistances, and stuff like that. And now for the last thing that we're gonna cover, it's gonna be our flasks. So we have here Cinder Swallow Urn, and it is so 15% of damage taken from hits is leached as life during effect. Enemies ignited by you during effect take increased damage and recover 2% of mana when you kill an enemy, which is definitely very good, and it gives you an onslaught, which is definitely gonna be a pretty good damage increase as well. Then we have Diamond Flask, which gives us crit strike chance. Then we have Quartz Flask for phasing, additional suppression chance. And here we see immunity to bleeding and corrupted blood. By the way, you can have immunity to corrupted blood on your jewels as corrupted implicit, and I probably would encourage you to do just that. Then we have our Sulfur Flask, which will increase your regeneration via Consecrated Ground and will give you additional damage, and we see here increased crit strike in mods. And Quicksilver for increases to our speed. Just like that. If you're uncomfortable without Life Flask, you can probably swap some of this. You can probably swap your Quartz Flask. It's gonna be not as impactful as you removing Diamond Flask or Sulfur Flask, or maybe like Quicksilver but it's definitely gonna make you a bit slower without a Quicksilver Flask. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you're having a good time. Don't forget to subscribe and have a good day.